All right, buckle up everyone, because we are diving headfirst into the AI News Digest from March 8th, 2025. Lots to cover, folks. Lots to cover. From the rumors swirling around Llama 4 to the QWQ32B buzz. We're going to unpack it all so you don't have to.
It's really quite amazing, how these online communities, I'm talking about Discord, subreddits, all of them, they're like the heartbeat of the AI world. Real-time pulse. It shows just how fast this field is moving, doesn't it?
You're not kidding. And it's not just like the speed, it's the variety too. I mean, think about it. New model releases, hot debates, and deep dives into like the nitty-gritty settings and even security risks.
Exactly. And speaking of deep dives, let's talk about QWQ32B, shall we? This model, it's been getting so much hype, but it seems like, well, you need to do some fine-tuning to really get the best out of it, particularly that temperature setting, right?
Right. On DeepSeek, everyone's saying zero point 0.6 is the magic number for the temperature, especially for reasoning tasks. It's kind of like finding that sweet spot,
Okay.
where the model can get creative, but still stay logical.
Finding that balance, that's the key, isn't it? Too much randomness and the output can be, well, all over the place.
Yeah.
And too little, it gets, well, too predictable and stiff.
Like finding the right recipe. All right, so speaking of balance, how about Google's Gemini embedding model? It's apparently blowing everyone out of the water on the Massive Text Embedding Benchmark. And they even bumped up the input context length to like 8,000 tokens. Can you believe it?
That increased context length, that's what's got me hooked. Think about what that means for things like text summarization or even question answering. The model can actually process such large chunks of text, right? It's leading to a much deeper, more comprehensive understanding.
It's like giving the model like a wider view,
Yeah.
letting it see the entire landscape. Okay, so still on the subject of models with potential. We got to talk Llama 4. The rumor mill is, well, it's going crazy. Meta and Sesame are supposedly releasing Llama 4 with voice capabilities built in.
Now that's a game changer. Having that voice AI directly inside a model like Llama 4, that could really open doors for developers. Think about it, personalized voice assistance or even interactive storytelling. The possibilities are endless, aren't they?
It's like those characters we see in games and virtual worlds, right?
Uh-huh.
But brought to life in our everyday lives. Pretty wild stuff.
It is wild. But speaking of AI characters, it's been strangely quiet. Character 3. It's making some people think, are there some development hiccups? Or, well, maybe something bigger is going on behind the scenes.
It's like the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
You just know you're either working on a huge revamp or, well, facing some serious challenges.
Yeah.
Who knows? Only time will tell.
It will. It will. Now, changing gears a bit, but something that will affect how we train and run these models, NVIDIA and Radeon. They both announced native FP4 support.
Now that is huge news, especially for those working with these massive language models. FP4, it could really slash training times and, well, memory requirements. That means we can build even more complex and powerful AI systems.
It's like they gave developers a supercharged engine. They can push the boundaries further, experiment with larger data sets and more sophisticated architectures, all without being held back by the hardware.
Exactly. And with the 9070 XT already showing those impressive gains, those speed gains, over the 7900 XTX, it's like a race to optimize for FP4 has begun.
This kind of competition, it's good, right? Often leads to these rapid advancements, and ultimately that benefits everyone in the AI world. Speaking of advancements, you know what else is creating quite a buzz, particularly for content creation? Diffusion models.
Okay, I'll admit it. Diffusion models have me really intrigued. That idea of generating text like an artist sketching an image, that just, well, it blows my mind.
The interesting thing is they approach text generation from a completely different angle. Unlike those traditional models that try to guess the next word in a sequence, these models, they start with, like, a noisy version and then refine it step by step until it becomes, well, a coherent piece of writing.
So it's like starting with a rough draft and then polishing it, right? And Inception Labs, they're saying they've achieved like mid-journey-like speed and control with their diffusion models. If that's true, it could totally change how we use AI for writing, creating content, all of it.
Imagine that an AI writing partner that not only writes quickly, but also gives you that control, that fine-grained control over the style and tone.
All right, before we get too carried away with all this hype, let's take a breath and talk about something that has some people a bit worried. Meta's research on, well, latent tokens and VQVAE, they're saying it could improve reasoning in large language models.
It's all about how AI models process information, right? They're suggesting that by compressing the text into, well, these latent tokens, it might actually make their reasoning better.
So it's like giving the model a more streamlined way to understand and use information. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, imagine you're working on a really hard logic puzzle. Instead of having to read through pages and pages of text explaining the puzzle, you get a set of symbols, right? Symbols that represent the key parts and relationships. That's kind of what VQVAE does. It transforms those long streams of text into a condensed symbolic representation.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like giving the model a shortcut, right? A shortcut to understanding the logic of the problem.
Exactly. And Meta's research is suggesting that this could really boost performance, especially on tasks that require logical reasoning and problem solving. Speaking of humor, did you see that meme, the one comparing optimization researchers on Twitter to like cat and dog owners?
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. It's funny how those personality types seem to gravitate toward optimizing algorithms. Maybe it's that whole finding the perfect balance thing,
Yeah.
like in reinforcement learning, exploration versus exploitation, or, giving your pet freedom, but also having boundaries.
Maybe it's just the challenge that draws them in. I mean, at its core, optimization is about finding the absolute best solution, right? But within certain limits and constraints.
Limits, boundaries, finding the best solution. It's all connected, isn't it? Speaking of limits, there's been a lot of talk about the whole malicious prompt injection thing, especially with, AI agents becoming more integrated with all these tools and services. We touched on it a bit earlier, but I think it's worth digging into a bit more, don't you think?
Definitely a valid concern. As these agents get access to more powerful tools and, more importantly, more sensitive data, well, the risks get a lot higher. Imagine an AI agent, one that's supposed to be managing a financial portfolio, being tricked into making a bunch of unauthorized trades.
That's a scary thought. It really shows how crucial it is to have those security measures in place right right from the beginning. It's like we're not just building these AI agents, we're building entire ecosystems around them, and those ecosystems need to be secure.
Exactly. And it's not just about stopping attacks from the outside. It's also about ensuring these AI agents operate within some well-defined ethical guidelines. We need to design them in a way that reduces the risk of unexpected consequences, even when they're faced with malicious input.
It's a bit like raising a kid, isn't it? You got to teach them right from wrong, set boundaries, and instill a sense of responsibility. But with AI, the stakes are just so much higher.
Definitely. The decisions these AI agents make, they can have huge consequences, impacting individuals, organizations, even whole societies. It's a huge responsibility.
It is. Speaking of responsibility, you know who deserves a shout out? DeepSeek. With their open source week, they've released so many new tools and resources like Unsloth. It's supposed to speed up the whole fine-tuning process for large language models.
Unslothen, now that's a game changer, especially for developers who want to work with those powerful models, like Llama 3 and Mistral, but maybe they don't have access to all those huge computing resources. It really cuts down the time and processing power needed for fine-tuning, makes it way more accessible to more people.
It's like they're breaking down walls and saying, hey, come join the party, help us develop AI. And with all the cool stuff happening in open source, it makes you wonder, how's this going to affect the whole AI landscape? On one hand, you've got these communities collaborating, pushing boundaries. But on the other hand, you have these big players like Google making big moves with their AI products and services.
It's an interesting dynamic for sure. Google's recent push with their AI search features, all powered by Gemini 2.0, that's a perfect example. They're putting all their chips on AI being the future of how we find information. And their grip on the search market gives them a pretty big advantage.
It's like they're creating this AI-powered universe, right? That could change everything from how we search for stuff to how we interact with the world. It's exciting, but also raises some questions, doesn't it? Like about the concentration of power, the impact on competition, and, new ideas.
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? Can these open source initiatives keep up with the resources and reach of these massive companies, or will we see power consolidated in the hands of, just a few big players?
It's like that classic race,
Yeah.
the small, scrappy startup versus the giant corporation. The startup's got the agility, the fresh ideas, but the corporation has the infrastructure and the money. Going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
It will. And, with all this talk about the technology and the industry, it's easy to forget about the human side of it all. Remember, AI is a tool made by people for people. Its impact depends on the choices we make.
Absolutely. We can't forget that. We've got to approach AI development with responsibility, making sure it aligns with our values and, well, benefits humanity as a whole.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We have a duty to guide AI in a direction that helps everyone, that creates a future where AI empowers us to solve those big problems, and create a world that's, well, more fair and sustainable.
A good vision to strive for. Okay, before we wrap things up, I wanted to mention something that, well, caught my eye. A user reported a 30-minute compile time for a simple, like a 2-layer model in TinyGrad.
That's definitely not normal for TinyGrad. It's known for being, straightforward and fast. Could be a one-off thing, maybe a specific hardware or software issue, or it could be something deeper within the framework itself.
It's like finding a crack in the foundation.
Yeah.
You think everything's solid, then boom, you got to investigate, make sure it's not a sign of something bigger.
Exactly. And this really highlights how important it is to have a strong community behind these open source projects. When users share their experiences, it helps everyone, right? Helps identify and fix bugs, improve performance, and in the end, it makes the whole framework more robust and reliable.
It's a good reminder that even the smartest people can benefit from the collective wisdom and experience of a diverse community. Now, speaking of community, we've got a ton of comments and questions coming in from our listeners. So should we dive into those?
Let's do it. Always enjoy hearing what our listeners are thinking, getting those conversations going. It helps all of us learn and grow.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these listener questions. We've got a lot of curious minds out there. This first one is a big one. It's about the future of coding. With all this crazy AI progress, one listener's wondering, will AI eventually just, replace human programmers altogether? Poof, gone.
Yeah, that's a question that's been floating around a lot lately. It's understandable, all right. But while AI is getting really good at some coding tasks, I think it's more likely to be a partner, augmenting what human programmers can do, not replacing them entirely.
So more like working together than like a battle for the coding throne.
Exactly. AI can handle those tedious, repetitive bits, generating basic code, even suggesting solutions to tricky problems. But it's still us humans who bring that creative spark, that intuition, and, well, that deep understanding of what we're actually trying to solve.
It's like having an extra pair of hands, right? An AI assistant to take care of the boring stuff, freeing up programmers to focus on the big picture, the creative stuff.
Exactly. And as AI tools get even more sophisticated, that partnership, that collaboration is just going to get smoother and more productive.
Makes sense. Okay, this next one is interesting. Another listener is asking about, well, the potential downsides of relying too much on AI. They're worried we might lose those crucial coding skills, if we let AI do all the heavy lifting.
That's a valid point. It's all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Using AI's power, but not letting our own skills get rusty. We can't become so dependent on AI that we forget how to think for ourselves, how to solve problems on our own.
It's like, think about GPS navigation. Super helpful. But if you use it all the time, you might forget how to actually read a map, get your bearings.
Precisely. We need to use AI to make us better, not weaker.
All right, last question before we wrap things up. This listener asks, with all the talk about these huge language models and super fancy AI systems, what about the simpler stuff, the more lightweight approaches? Do they still matter?
Absolutely. Those simpler models and approaches, they still have a super important role to play, especially when you're working with limited resources or when speed and efficiency are really crucial.
It's like using the right tool for the job. Right, you wouldn't use a sledgehammer to crack open a walnut.
Exactly. Sometimes a simpler model that's quick to train and easy to use is a way better choice than a massive, complex one. It all boils down to what you're trying to achieve.
Well said. All right, I think that's a wrap for today's deep dive. Covered a lot, huh? The newest models, the tech advancements, and even those big ethical and societal questions surrounding AI. It's been quite a journey.
It has, and it's clear that AI is this constantly moving target. New things popping up all the time. It's an exciting time to be in this field, but we have to be mindful, develop things responsibly.
You got it. We need that enthusiasm, but also that healthy dose of caution, making sure AI is a force for good in the world.
Well said. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. Keep that curiosity alive, stay informed, and keep those conversations about the future of AI going.
Until next time, folks, keep those AI News Digests coming our way, and we'll be here to break it all down for you.